शाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमद्वेङ्कटस्वामिनित्यामने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणि प्रचार्य निर्विशेष शून्यादि पाश्चात्य विष्णुतारे श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे सर्वशास्त्राब्धि पीयूष सर्ववेदैक सत्फल सर्वसिद्धांत रत्नाढ्य सर्वलोकैक दृक्पद सर्वभागवत प्राण श्रीमद्भागवत प्रभो ललिध्वांतोदितादित्य श्रीकृष्ण परिवर्तिता परमानंद पाठाय प्रेम वर्षक्षराय ते सर्वदा सर्वसेव्याय श्रीकृष्णाय नमोस्तुमे अतैक बंधो मत्संकीर्ण मद्गुरो मन्महाधन मन्निस्तारक मद्भाग्य मदानंद नमोस्तुते असाधु साधुता दाये नतिनी चोच्यता कर आनमुंच तदा जन्माभ्यम कंठे वस्परा नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय 1.9.33 to 1.9.39. Oh, I should get my book. Physical book. Okay. 33. Tribhuvana Kavanam. Tribhuvana Kamanam. Kamalavarnam. Ravikara Gaura Varambaram Tadhane. Vapura Lakakulavrtananabjam Vijaya Sakhe Pratirastu Me Navadya. Shri Krishna is the intimate friend of Arjuna. He has appeared on this earth in his transcendental body, which resembles the bluish color of the tamala tree. His body attracts everyone in the three planetary systems, upper, middle, and lower. May his glittering yellow dress and his lotus face, covered with paintings of sandalwood pulp, be the object of my attraction, and may I not desire fruitive results. इदानीं श्रीकृष्णमूर्तिं वर्णयन् रतिं प्रार्थयते. Now he describes Lord Shri Krishna's form and prays for attraction to him. Tribhuvana Kamanam. Trilokyam Ekameva Kamaniyam Yat Tad Vapur Dadhane Ratir Me Astu. May my attraction be to him who revealed a most attractive body, a body which was a form which was attractive to the three worlds. Atham Bhutam Vapuhu. What kind of body was that? Kamalavan Neelaha Varnaha Yasyattat. It had the color of a tamal tree. Pratah Kalina Rave Karaha Iva Swataha Eva Gaure Pite Vare Nirmale Chambare Yasmin Stat. It glittered like the morning sun, like the rays of the morning sun. His clothes were spotless. Alaka Kulai Upari Avartam Ananabjam Yasminstak. His lotus face was covered by locks of hair. Vijayasakhe Partha Sarathau Anavadya Haituki Palavi Sandhya Rahita Ratihi Astu. May I have an attraction which is free from the pursuit of any selfish desire. Ahituki. To that friend of Vijaya, which means to the charioteer of Partha. When Sri Krishna, by his own internal pleasure, appears on earth, he does so by the agency of his internal potency. The attractive features of his transcendental body are desired in all the three worlds, namely the upper, middle, and lower planetary systems. Nowhere in the universe are there such beautiful bodily features as those of Lord Krishna. Therefore, this transcendental body has nothing to do with anything materially created. Arjuna is described here as the conqueror, Vijaya, and Krishna is described as his intimate friend. Bhishma Dev, on his bed of arrows after the battle of Kurukshetra, is remembering the particular dress of Lord Krishna which he put on as the driver of Arjuna's chariot. While fighting was going on between Arjuna and Bhishma, Bhishma's attraction was drawn by the glittering dress of Krishna, and indirectly he admired his so-called enemy Arjuna for possessing the Lord as his friend. Arjuna was always a conqueror. Arjuna is referred to as Vijaya, as the conqueror, because the Lord was his friend. Bhishma Dev takes this opportunity to address the Lord as Vijaya Sakhe, friend of Arjuna, because the Lord is pleased when he is addressed conjointly with his devotees who are related with him in different transcendental humors, different transcendental mellows. While Krishna was the charioteer of Arjuna, sun rays glittered on the dress of the Lord, and the beautiful hue created by the reflection of such rays was never forgotten by Bhishma Dev. As a great fighter, he was relishing the relation with Krishna in the chivalrous humor. Transcendental relation with the Lord in any one of the different rasas, humors, is relishable by the respective devotees in the highest ecstasy. Less intelligent mundaners who want to make a show of being transcendently related with the Lord artificially jump at once to the relation of conjugal love, imitating the damsels of Rajadham. Such a cheap relation with the Lord exhibits only the base mentality of the mundaner, because one who has relished conjugal humor with the Lord cannot be attached to worldly conjugal rasa, which is condemned even by mundane ethics. The eternal relation of a particular soul with the Lord is evolved. A genuine relation of the living being with the Supreme Lord can take any form out of five principal rasas, and it does not make any difference in transcendental degree to the genuine devotee. Bhishmadev is a concrete example of this, and it should be carefully observed how the great general is transcendently related with the Lord. 54. Yuthi Turaga Rajo Vidhumra Vishwa Kachalulita Shramavar Yalankritasye Mama Nishita Sharair Vibhidyaman Vachivilasat Kavaches to Krishna Atma. On the battlefield, where Shri Krishna attended Arjuna out of friendship, the flowing hair of Lord Krishna turned ashen. It had the color of ash due to the dust raised by the hoofs of the horses. And because of his labor, beads of sweat wetted his face. All these decorations, intensified by the wounds on his skin, dealt by my sharp arrows, were enjoyed by him. Let my mind thus go unto Sri Krishna. Vijayasakitvam eva anuvaranayan ratin prarthayate. Now, he continues to describe the Lord as the Lord's friendship with Vijaya, with Arjuna. And again, he prays for attraction to Lord Krishna. Yudhi, Yuddhe. Uraganam, Urarajas, Uragarajas, Tena Vidhumra, Dusaraha, Te, Cha, Te, Vishwam Cha, Itastata, Chalantaha, Kachaha, Kuntalaha, Taihi, Lulitam, Vikirnam, Sramavari, Cheda Bindurupam Tena, Bhakta Vatsalya Dyota Tena, Alankritam Asyam. So Lord Krishna's face being decorated by the dust as well as the beads of sweat on his face, all of them indicate his bhaktavatsarya, his affection for his devotee. Yasya tasmin Shri Krishna mama atma manaha astu ramatam ityartha. May my mind be pleased. May my mind be pleased with that Shri Krishna. Punah kim bhute, further description of that Lord Krishna. Madiyaihi nishitaihi tikshnaihi sharaihi vividyamana tvam yasya tasmin. His skin was pierced by my sharp arrows. Vibhidyamana. According to Siddhanta Pradipa, Siddhanta Pradipa is a commentary by a representative of the Nimbarka line, whose name was Sri Shukadev. So this is how he comments. Sharaihi vibhiti vigata bhede atra hetu garbham visheshanam amanat vachi vedetra pramana avishaya vigrahe tvak shabdasya vigraha upalakshanatvat. Here, the skin is a reference to the entire form of the Lord. And vibhidyamana, where is that? Vibhidyamana vachi. Vibhidyamana can also, vibhidyamana means one whose skin cannot be understood through any means other than through the Vedas. One whose form cannot be understood through any means other than through the Vedas. Transcendental form. Charaiheva vilasat prutyat avacham yasya tasmin. And his armor, vilasat kavachi, he was finding happiness with a protective armor. Sridhar Swami interprets vilasat as trutyat. His kavacha was also being pierced, being attacked, pierced by Bhishma's arrows. The Lord is the absolute form of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. As such, transcendental loving service to the Lord in one of the five principal relations, namely Shantadasya, Sakhya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya, neutrality, servitorship, fraternity, parental affection, and conjugal love, is graciously accepted by the Lord when offered to the Lord in genuine love and affection. Sri Bhishma Dev is a great devotee of the Lord in the relation of servitorship. Thus, his throwing of sharp arrows at the transcendental body of the Lord is as good as the worship of another devotee who throws soft roses upon him. It appears that Bhishma Dev is repenting the actions he committed against the person of the Lord. But factually, the Lord's body was not at all pained due to his transcendental existence. His body is not matter. Both he himself and his body are complete spiritual identity. Spirit is never pierced, burnt, dried, moistened, etc. This is vividly explained in the Bhagavad Gita. So also it is stated in the Skanda Purana. It is said there that spirit is always uncontaminated and indestructible. It cannot be distressed, nor can it be dried up. When Lord Vishnu in his incarnation appears before us, he seems to be like one of the conditioned souls, materially encaged, just to bewilder the asuras or the non-believers, who are always alert to kill the Lord, even from the very beginning of his appearance. They are alert to kill the Lord means they are alert to attempt to kill the Lord. Kamsa wanted to kill Krishna, and Ravana wanted to kill Ram, because foolishly they were unaware of the fact that the Lord is never killed, or the spirit is never annihilated. Therefore, Bhishma Deva's piercing of the body of Lord Krishna is a sort of bewildering problem for the non-devotee atheist. But those who are devotees or liberated souls are not bewildered. Bhishma Deva appreciated the all-merciful attitude of the Lord. Although he had been disturbed by Bhishma Deva's sharp arrows, he had not left Arjuna alone, nor was he reluctant to come before Bhishma Deva's deathbed, even though he had been ill-treated by him on the battlefield. Bhishma's repentance and the Lord's merciful attitude are both unique in this picture. Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, a great acharya and devotee in the humor of conjugal love with the Lord, remarks very saliently in this regard. He says that the wounds created by the body of the Lord by the sharp arrows of Bhishma Deva were as pleasing to the Lord as the biting of his fiancée when she bites the body of the Lord directed by a strong sense of sex desire. Such biting by the opposite sex is never taken as a sign of enmity, even if there's a wound on the body. Therefore, the fighting as an exchange of transcendental pleasure between the Lord and his pure devotee, Sri Bhishma Deva, was not at all mundane. Besides that, since the Lord's body and the Lord are identical, there was no possibility of wounds in the absolute body. The apparent wounds caused by the sharp arrows are misleading to the common man. But one who has a little absolute knowledge can understand the transcendental exchange in the chivalrous relation. The Lord was perfectly happy with the wounds caused by the sharp arrows of Bhishma Deva. The word Vibhidyamana is significant because the Lord's skin is not different from the Lord. Because our skin is different from our soul, in our case, the word Vibhidyamana or being bruised and cut would have been quite suitable. Transcendental bliss is of different varieties. The variety of activities in the mundane world is but a perverted reflection of transcendental bliss. So the idea is that just as when you have a good cook, even if he cooks foodstuff of all the 6 tastes, even a bitter taste, it is perceived as nectarian by refined eaters. So like that, even what appears to be distress in the rasas of prema bhakti, there are actually different types of happiness. Because everything in the mundane world is qualitatively mundane. It is full of inebrities. It is full of intoxicating defects. Intoxicating defects. Inebriety, Prabhupada often uses this expression. Inebriety, he uses it to refer to contamination, but not just ordinary contamination. It is intoxicating contamination. Intoxicating further indicates that these contaminations are also addictive. They are addictive. They are bewildering. Just like when a man drinks, when his consciousness is bewildered, he cannot perceive reality as such. Whereas in the absolute realm, because everything is of the same absolute nature, there are varieties of enjoyment without inebriety. The Lord enjoyed the wounds created by his great devotee Bhishma Deva, and because Bhishma Deva is a devotee in the chivalrous relation, he fixes up his mind on Krishna in that wounded condition. 55. Sapati sakhi vacho nishamya madhyan nijaparayor balayo ratham niveshya sthitavati paras sainika yurakshna Kritavati Partha Sakhe Ratir Mamastu. In obedience to the command of his friend, Lord Shri Krishna entered the arena of the battlefield of Kurukshetra between the soldiers of Arjuna and Duryodhana. While there, he shortened the lifespans of the opposite party by his merciful glance. This was done simply by his looking at the enemy. Let my mind be fixed upon that Krishna. Kimcha, moreover, Sapadi iti, Sapadi, suddenly, on the battlefield, सेनयोरुभयोर्मध्ये रथं स्थापयमेच्युत यावदेतान् निरीक्ष्येऽहं योद्धकामान् अवस्थितान् इति सख्युः अर्जुनस्य वचः निशम्य सपदि तत्क्षणमेव स्वबलयोर्बलयोः सैन्ययोः मध्ये रथं निवेश्य स्थिते पार्थसखे अमरतिरस्ति. May my attraction be to the friend of Partha, who had situated the chariot in the midst of both the armies, both his and his opponent's armies. At the very moment when he heard Arjuna's words, please situate my chariot between the two armies, my Lord Achyuta, until I see all those standing here desiring to fight. This is a Bhagavad Gita verse. Tatra sthitva kritam sakhyam darshayati. And after being situated there, Bhishma Dev then points out the friendship between Krishna and Arjuna after Krishna situated the chariot there. Parasya Duryodhanasya Sainikanam Ayuhu Akshna Kaladrishtya Krutavati. The Supreme Lord, by his glance of time, took away the lifespan of the armies of Duryodhana. Asau Bhishmaha, Asau Dronaha, Asau Karnaha, इत्यादि तत्तत् प्रदर्शन व्याजेन दृष्ट्यैव सर्वेषाम् आयुः आकृष्य अर्जुनस्य जयं कृतवती. The Supreme Lord, he pointed out to Arjuna, this is Bhishma, this is Drona, this is Karna, and so on. But on the pretext of showing each of them, simply by glancing at them, he had withdrawn their life heirs. In that way, he had given victory to Arjuna. In the Bhagavad Gita 1.21 to 25, Arjuna ordered the infallible Lord Shri Krishna to place his chariot between the phalanxes of the soldiers. He asked him to stay there until he had finished observing the enemies he had to face in the battle. When the Lord was so asked, he at once did so, just like an order carrier. And the Lord pointed out all the important men on the opposite side, saying, here is Bhishma, here is Drona, and so on. The Lord, being the supreme living being, is never the order supplier or order carrier of anyone, whoever he may be. But out of his causeless mercy and affection for his pure devotees, sometimes he carries out the order of the devotee like an awaiting servant. By executing the order of a devotee, the Lord becomes pleased as a father is pleased to carry out the order of his small child. This is possible only out of pure transcendental love between the Lord and his devotees, and Bhishmadev was quite aware of this fact. He therefore addressed the Lord as the friend of Arjuna. The Lord diminished the duration of life of the opposite party by his merciful glance. It is said that all the fighters who assembled on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained salvation by personally seeing the Lord at the time of death. Therefore, his diminishing the duration of life of Arjuna's enemy does not mean that he was partial to the cause of Arjuna. Factually, he was merciful to the opposite party because they would not have attained salvation by dying at home in the ordinary course of life. Here was a chance to see the Lord at the time of death and thus attain salvation from material life. Therefore, the Lord is all good, and whatever he does is for everyone's good. Apparently, it was for the victory of Arjuna. his intimate friend, but actually it was for the good of Arjuna's enemies. Such are the transcendental activities of the Lord, and whoever understands this also gets salvation after quitting this material body. The Lord does no wrong in any circumstance because he is absolute, all good at all times. 26. व्यवहितप्रतनां मुखं निरीक्ष्य स्वजनवधाद् विमुखस्य दोषबुद्ध्या कुमतिमहरदात्मविद्यया यश शरणरतिः परमस्य तस्य मेस्तु. When Arjuna was seemingly polluted by ignorance, upon observing the soldiers and commanders before him on the battlefield, the Lord eradicated his ignorance by delivering transcendental knowledge. May his lotus feet always remain the object of my attraction. It's something in chat. Please explain about the chivalrous relationship between the Lord and Bhishma. It will come, it will come. Some very interesting explanation will come. Biting of a fiancé who bites the Lord's body directed by a strong sense of sex desire. How can we explain these things as brahmachari? We should not explain. Just leave it. That's all. Simple solution. Krishna will help those who deserve to understand. We are not the saviors of the universe. We are more or less doing all these things for our Atma Shuddhi, for our own self-purification.
So also in the Krishna book, there are 5 chapters which describes about the gopis' relation with the Lord and dance.
And then towards later, there are so many chapters that describes Krishna's relation with his wives, married wives also. So what we are supposed to do? We are supposed to read cover to cover. We should read Krishna book reading. We should increase in his ISKCON. I'm convinced that we should do certain very good things for ourselves and the rest of ISKCON. We should increase our chanting, quality, quantity. These are all good struggles. We have struggled for so many useless things in life. At least this is good struggle. We should loudly read out Krishna book readings and all. We should bring out. During Prabhupada's time, they were doing these kind of things. There was a reason why during Prabhupada's time, everything was very hot in Krishna consciousness. It's not simply Prabhupada's magical power. Of course, his magical power is also there, but that magical power has an effect. And that effect is that devotees were doing all these things. They were loudly reading out during Bhagavatam classes and all. In some of the temples, we hear from Prabhupada's disciples that a person who was giving a class, he would speak for something like half of the allotted time. And then each of the other participants who were sitting there, everybody was expected to also talk about that verse and purport. A little bit. So it's more or less like the blogs of today, you have a blog entry. The blog entry is the main thing. And then you have some 200 comments. Everybody writing different. The whole thing is the blog, actually. It's not only the blog entry. So these kind of things were very useful. This is how Prabhupada kept everyone's enthusiasm. So another thing that they were doing was they were loudly reading out Prabhupada's books. These things were also happening, especially Krishna book reading. Very, very nice. Everything is explained there. You just have to patiently we read, then we will understand. Prabhupada, before that Raslila chapter begins, 29th chapter, Prabhupada spends a few pages explaining that these are his own internal potencies. And towards the end of the Raslila also, further discussion comes. Again, these are all Krishna's own internal potencies. It's like a child playing with his own reflections in a mirror. Like that, we understand. Gradually, we begin to understand. Mainly, it's when we submit to Krishna through the process of chanting. Then we gradually begin to understand. Okay, 36. Let me look at Bhavartha Dipika. Na kevalam Arjunasya sapatna ayur pranenaiva jayam avahan kintu avidyaharanena apityaha. So it's not that he just brought about victory by withdrawing the life heirs of Arjuna's opponents. He also withdrew their avidya, their spiritual ignorance. Vyavahita, dure sthita, yaha pratana. Pratana is a particular unit of an army. Tasya mukhamiva mukham agre sthitan Bhishmadin nirikshya ityarthaha. So he looked at Bhishma and others. Swajana vadhat vimukhasya nivrittasya taduktam gitasu. एवं मुक्त्वार्जुनः संख्ये रथोपस्थौ उपाविशेद विसृज्य शरं चापं शोक संविघ्न मानसः इति. Arjuna, in the meanwhile, had become averse to the killing of his relatives. And is noted in Bhagavad Gita. Having said this, Arjuna sat on his chariot in the middle of the battlefield. He gave up his bow and arrows, and his mind was absorbed in distress, was dejected through distress. Tumatim aham anta ityadi kubuddhim. She had developed a misconception, a misunderstanding, because of which he lamented, oh, I'm going to be killing all these people. The kings and the commanders were to stand in the front of the fighting soldiers. That was a system of actual fighting. The kings and commanders were not so-called presidents or ministers of defense as they are today. They would not stay home while the poor soldiers or mercenaries were fighting face to face. This may be the regulation of modern democracy, but when actual monarchy was prevailing, the monarchs were not cowards elected without consideration of a royal qualification. As it was evident from the battlefield of Kurukshetra, all the executive heads of both parties, namely Drona, Bhishma, Arjuna, and Duryodhana, were not sleeping. All of them were actual participants in the fighting, which was selected to be executed at a place away from the civil residential quarters. This means that the innocent citizens were immune from all effects of fighting between the rival royal party. The citizens had no business in seeing what was going to happen during such fighting. They were to pay 1/4 of their income to the ruler, whether he be Arjuna or Duryodhana. All the commanders of the parties on the battlefield of Kurukshetra were standing face to face, and Arjuna saw them with great compassion and lamented that he was to kill his kinsmen on the battlefield for the sake of the empire. He was not at all afraid of the giant military phalanx presented by Duryodhana, but because he was a merciful devotee of the Lord, renunciation of worldly things was natural for him, and thus he decided not to fight for worldly possessions. But this was due to a poor fund of knowledge, and therefore it is said here that his intelligence became polluted. In other words, it was a misapplication of his natural spiritual quality of compassion. His intelligence could not be polluted at any time because he was a devotee and constant companion of the Lord, as is clear in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna's intelligence became apparently polluted because otherwise there would not have been a chance to deliver the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita for the good of all polluted, conditioned souls encaged in material bondage by their misconceptions concerning their relationship with the false material body. The Bhagavad Gita was delivered to the conditioned souls of the world to deliver them from the wrong conception of identifying the body with the soul and to re-establish the soul's eternal relation with the Supreme Lord. Atmavidya, or transcendental knowledge of himself, was primarily spoken by the Lord for the benefit of all concerned in all parts of the universe. 57. Swanigamam apahaya mat pratigyam Ritamadhikartum avapluto rathastha Dhrita ratha charano jaya chalagur Haririvahantum ibham gatottariyah. Fulfilling my vow and sacrificing his own promise, he got down from the chariot. took up its wheel and ran towards me hurriedly, just as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He even dropped his outer garment on the way. Mamatu Hantamanugraham Kritavan Ityahad Vakyam. But Lord Krishna gave me great mercy. He says this in two verses, text 37 and 38. Swanigamam Ashastra eva aham sahaya matram karishyami evam bhutam swapratigyam. Sri Krishnam Shastram Grahishyami evam rupam mat pratigyam ritam satyam yatha bhavati. Atha adhi adhikam kartum yo rathastha san avaplutah सहसा एव अवतीर्णः सन् यः अभेयात् अभिमुखम् अधावत्. The Supreme Lord had promised that I will not, without taking any weapons, I will simply help. He gave up that promise because he wanted to make my promise come true. I had promised that I will make Sri Krishna take up a weapon. So he gave more value to my promise than to his promise. And he had gotten down from his chariot and he rushed towards me. Like a lion that goes to kill an elephant. Dhrito ratha charanash chakram yena saha. So he had taken up the wheel of the chariot. Tadacha samrambhena manushya natya vismritehe udarastha sarvabhutam bhuvanam bharena pratipadam chalanti gau prithvi yasmat saha. At that time, he had forgotten his dramatic performance as a human being. He was in a fighting spirit. At every move, when he moved, the entire earth shook. Tenaiva samrambhena patigatam patitam uttariyam vastram yasyasa. And his uttariya, his upper cloth, had fallen when he was rushing in fury. He fell down by the path. Samukundo me gatir bhavatu ityuttarena anvaya. May that Lord Mukunda be my shelter. This verse is completed in the next verse. This sentence is completed in the next verse. The battle of Kurukshetra was fought on military principles, but at the same time in a sporting spirit, as a friend fights with another friend. Duryodhana criticized Bhishma Deva, alleging that reluctant to kill Arjuna because of paternal affection. A Kshatriya cannot tolerate insults on the principle of fighting. Bhishma Deva therefore promised that the next day he would kill all the 5 Pandavas with special weapons made for the purpose. Duryodhana was satisfied and he kept the arrows with him to be delivered the next day during the fight. By tricks, Arjuna took the arrows from Duryodhana, and Bhishma Deva could understand that this was the trick of Lord Krishna. So he took a vow that the next day Krishna would have to take up weapons himself or his friend Arjuna would die. In the next day's fighting, Bhishma Deva fought so violently that both Arjuna and Krishna were in trouble. Arjuna was almost defeated, and the situation was so intense that he was about to be killed by Bhishma Deva the very next moment. At that time, Lord Krishna wanted to please his devotee Bhishma by keeping Bhishma's promise, which was more important than his own. Thus, seemingly, he broke his own promise. He had promised before the beginning of the Battle of Kurukshetra that he would remain without weapons and would not use his strength for either of the parties. But to protect Arjuna, he got down from the chariot, took up the wheel of the chariot, and hurriedly rushed at Bhishma in an angry mood, as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He dropped his covering cloth on the way, and out of great anger, he did not know that he had dropped it. Bhishma at once gave up his weapons and stood to be killed by Krishna, his beloved Lord. The fighting of the day was thus ended at that very moment, and Arjuna was saved. Of course, there was no possibility of Arjuna's death because the Lord himself was on the chariot. But because Bhishma wanted to see Lord Krishna take up some weapon to save his friend, the Lord created this situation, making Arjuna's death appear imminent. He stood before Bhishma to show him that his promise was fulfilled and that he had taken up the wheel. 38. Shita Vishikha Hato Vishirna Damshak Shataja Paripluta Atatayino Ne Prasabham Abhisasaram Madvadartham Sabhavatu Me Bhagavan Gatir Mukundaha. May he, Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who awards salvation, be my ultimate destination. On the battlefield, he charged me as if angry because of the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows. His shield was shattered. His body was smeared with blood due to the wounds. Evam yada abhayat. So when the Lord approached Bhishma, tata smayamanasya आततायनः धर्मिणः मे चितैः तीक्ष्णैः कृशिखैः अतः विशीर्णदंशः विध्वस्तकवचः शतजेन रुधिरेण परिप्लुतः व्याप्तः सन् प्रसभं बलात् वारयन्तम् अर्जुनम् अपि अतिक्रम्य वधार्थम् अभिससार अभिमुखं जगाम. So at the time, when I had aggressively attacked him with my arrows while smiling, using very sharp arrows. His armor was smashed and he was completely filled. His body was moistened all over with blood. So forcefully, he gave up Arjuna, who was trying to stop him, and he aggressively, to kill me, he came towards me. Evam yo loka pratitya Arjuna pakshapati iva lakshitaha vastutastu mama eva anugraham kritavan yan Madbhaktena uktam vachaha mam mrisha astu iti sa bhagavan me gatir bhavati ityarthaha. So to the external vision of the common people, he appears to be partial to Arjuna, but in reality, he had bestowed mercy upon me because he did not want the words spoken by me, his devotee, to become false. May that Supreme Personality of Godhead be my shelter. What is this? The dealings of Lord Krishna and Bhishma on the battlefield of Kurukshetra are interesting because the activities of Lord Sri Krishna appear to be partial to Arjuna and at enmity with Bhishma. But factually, all this was especially meant to show special favor to Bhishma, a great devotee of the Lord. Emphasis. The astounding feature of such dealings is that a devotee can please the Lord by playing the part of an enemy. The Lord, being absolute, can accept service from his pure devotee, even in the garb of an enemy. The Supreme Lord cannot have any enemy, nor can a so-called enemy harm him, because he is Ajita or unconquerable. But still, he takes pleasure when his pure devotee beats him like an enemy or rebukes him from a superior position, although no one can be superior to the Lord. But this only applies to pure devotees of the Lord. It does not apply to impure devotees or non-devotees. These are some of the transcendental reciprocatory dealings of the devotee with the Lord. And those who have no information of pure devotion service cannot penetrate into the mystery of such dealings. Bhishmadev played the part of a valiant warrior, and he purposely pierced the body of the Lord, so that to the common eyes it appeared that the Lord was wounded. But factually, all this was to bewilder the non-devotees. The Lord's all spiritual body cannot be wounded, and a devotee cannot become the enemy of the Lord. Had it been so, Bhishmadev would not have desired to have the very same Lord as the ultimate destination of his life. Had Bhishmadev been an enemy of the Lord, Lord Krishna could have annihilated him without even moving. There would have been no need to come before Bhishmadev with blood and wounds. But he did so because the warrior devotee wanted to see the transcendental beauty of the Lord decorated with wounds created by a pure devotee. This is the way of exchanging transcendental rasa or relations between the Lord and the servitor. By such dealings, both the Lord and the devotee become glorified in their respective positions. The Lord was so angry that Arjuna checked him when he was moving towards Bhishmadev, but in spite of Arjuna's checking him, he proceeded towards Bhishmadev as a lover goes to a lover without caring for hindrances. Apparently, it was to kill Bhishmadev, but factually it was to please him, a great devotee of the Lord. The Lord is undoubtedly the deliverer of all conditioned souls. The impersonalists desire salvation from him, and he always awards them according to their aspiration. But here, Bhishmadev prays that the ultimate destination of his life be the Lord in his personal feature. All pure devotees aspire for this. 39. Vijaya Ratha Kutamba Atatotre Dritahaya Rashmi Dachriye Kshani Ye Bhagavati Ratirastu Me Mumur Shor Yamiha Niriksha Hatagata Swarupam. At the moment of death, let my ultimate attraction be to Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. I concentrate my mind upon Arjuna's chariot driver, who stood with the whip in his right hand and a bridled rope in his left, and who was very careful to give protection to Arjuna's chariot by all means. Those who saw him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained their original forms after death. Tadevam Anyayehi api Vrityaraksha Vyagre Krishne Pratim Ashaste. So he hopes to get attraction to Lord Krishna, who was busy to protect his servant, even through unrighteous means. Vijayaha Arjunaha Tasya Rathaeva Kutumbam Akritya Shatairapi Rakshaniyaha Yasyatam. The Lord had pledged to protect Arjuna even by performing hundreds of forbidden activities. Attam Totram Pratodaha Yena Tasmin Dhritascha Te Hayanam Rashmayaha Pragrahaste Santi Asya Tasmin Vishyadibhyascha Ityan Anakarantadapi Rashmi Shabdad Inihi Tachriya Taya Sarathya Shriya Ikshani Shobhavami. The Lord was shining with the beauty of being the charioteer of Arjuna. Murshor Vartumit Choho Nano Anyaya Vartini Kimiti Ratihi Partayate Ataha. Anticipated objection. Why is Bhishma praying for attraction to somebody who engaged in unrighteous activities, that is now stated. Bhagavati, Achintya Ishwarye, the Supreme Lord possessed inconceivable opulences, Tadaha, which are now described. Iha yuddhe, ataha, sarve, yam nirikshya, Swarupam, that Samanam Rupam. He reads Swarupam instead of Swarupam. Adagata Swarupam. He reads Sarupam. Where am I? Swarupam, that Samanam Rupam Gata Prapta iti Divyadrishtya Pashyannaha. He brought them just by looking at the ones who were killed in that battle. He brought all of them to a status that was as good as his status. That's Samanam Rupam. A pure devotee of the Lord constantly sees the presence of the Lord within himself because of being transcendently related by loving service. Such a pure devotee cannot forget the Lord for a moment. This is called trance. The mystic yogi tries to concentrate upon the super soul by restraining the senses from all other engagements, and thus he ultimately attains samadhi. A devotee more easily attains samadhi or trance by constantly remembering the Lord's personal feature, along with his holy name, fame, pastimes, etc. Therefore, the concentration of the mystic yogi and that of the devotee are not on the same level. The concentration of the mystic yogi is mechanical, whereas that of the pure devotee is natural in pure love and spontaneous affection. Bhishmadev was a pure devotee, and as a military marshal, he constantly remembered the battlefield feature of the Lord as Parthasarathi, the chariot driver of Arjuna. Therefore, the Lord's pastime as Parthasarathi is also eternal. The pastimes of the Lord, beginning from his birth at the prison house of Kamsa up to the Mausala Leela at the end, all move one after another in all the universes, just as the clock hand moves from one point to another. And in such pastimes, his associates like the Pandavas and Bhishma are constant eternal companions. So it is in this sense that his Parthasarathi pastime is eternal. So Bhishma Dev never forgot the beautiful feature of the Lord as Parthasarathi, which even Arjuna could not see. Arjuna was behind the beautiful Parthasarathi, while Bhishma Dev was just in front of the Lord. As far as the military feature of the Lord is concerned, Bhishma Dev observed this with more relish than Arjuna. All the soldiers and other persons on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained their original spiritual forms after their death, because by the causeless mercy of the Lord, they were able to see him face to face on that occasion. The conditioned souls rotating in the evolutionary cycle from the aquatics up to the form of Brahma are all in the form of Maya, or the form obtained by one's own actions and awarded by material nature. The material forms of the conditioned souls are all foreign dresses, and when the conditioned soul becomes liberated from the clutches of the material energy, he attains his original spiritual form like the Lord's. The impersonalist wants to attain the impersonal Brahman effulgence of the Lord, but that is not at all congenial to the living parts and parcels of the Lord. Therefore, the impersonalists again fall down and get material forms, which are all false to the spirit soul. A spiritual form like the Lord's, either two-handed or four-handed, is attained by the devotees of the Lord, either in the Vaikunthas or in the Goloka planet, according to the original nature of the soul. Okay. Achyutaram rules.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So whoever left his body, they went to back to God at Vaikuntha.
All those who were seen by the Lord at that battle of Kurukshetra at the moment of death, when they saw. We will come across this again. Arthastra Puta. This form, which is sent person spiritual, is the Swarupa of the living being, and all the living beings who participated on the battlefield of Kurukshetra on both sides attained that Swarupa as confirmed by Bhishma Dev. So Lord Sri Krishna was not merciful only to the Pandavas, he was also merciful to the other parties because all of them attained the same result. Vishnu Dev wanted the same facility also, and that was his prayer to the Lord. Although his position as an associate of the Lord is assured in all circumstances. The conclusion is that whoever dies looking on the personality of Godhead within or without attains his Swarupa, which is the highest perfection of life. Okay, that is 39. Let me take up the Acharya's explanations. When he goes on praying for attraction, he actually means love for the Supreme Lord. In these prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even though Lord Krishna was right in front of him, Bhishma does not say, I offer my prayers to you, I pray to you for attraction to you. Instead, he talks in third person. May I become attracted to Lord Krishna and so on. That is because he was in a state of relishing the Lord's features. He was also absorbed in the mellows of warfare. So this reveals his attraction to the sweetness of the Supreme Lord's features. The Supreme Lord had exhibited his body. His body can neither be accepted nor rejected because they are actually revealed and not revealed. This is the nature of the form of Bhagavan Hari. Mohan Radhapati Guru.
You told about third person. I didn't understand that why he tells the third person, not to directly to Bhishma, directly to Krishna present in front of him.
He was overcome by a strong sense of attraction towards the different features that he was remembering. Therefore, he was talking in third person. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, text 34, in his commentary to 34, Bhishma Dev is praying for attraction while humbly submitting that he had previously committed an offense by shooting arrows at him and so on. But Srila Jiva Goswami points out that piercing the Lord's body and so on is simply a description of Krishna's deceptive pastimes, Mayika Leela. Because this is not reality. For instance, in the 10th canto, 11th chapter, text 13, Shukadeva Goswami would simply say, some sages say like this. It is simply a description of what was reported by others. And from the Skanda Purana we learn the Supreme Lord Vishnu. We actually saw this. We saw this Madhvacharya, that the Lord's body cannot be pierced and so on. Shri Bhishmasi Yuddha Samaye Daitya Avishtatvat Tatha Bhanam Yuktameva. At that time, when he was in the war, he saw Krishna's body being pierced and so on. Why is that? Because he was overcome by the Daityas at the time of the war into Adhuna. But now, Duswapna Dukkhasya Iva Tasya Nivedanam Kritam Iti Gyeya. Just as one who laments about a nightmare, so like that, he now laments and he submits all of this to Lord Krishna. This should be understood. Even in such situations, Lord Shri Krishna and Arjuna did not give up each other. The fact that Krishna did not give up assisting Arjuna even in that situation indicates his affection for his devotee. So the idea is that even though Bhishma he had committed an offense, still it is Krishna's nature to forgive and bless those who have unknowingly committed offenses or who had committed offenses and who later honestly repent. अत्र तु कृष्णाचक्रवर्तितः विविध्यमानत्वचि न तु विभिन्नत्वचि. The expression is used vividyamanatvachi. It does not say vibhinnatvachi. Vibhinnatvachi would literally mean one, referring to Krishna, one whose skin was pierced. Vividyamanatvachi literally means one whose skin was being pierced, appeared to be piercing. It appeared to be piercing because his body is Sachidananda and as such unpierceable. This is an uddipana for a battle, a stimulation for battle. By Sri Krishna withdrawing the life airs, him destroying their prarabdha reactions is also revealed here. Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur notes that Arjuna's misunderstanding at that moment was just for that point in time, just as Yudhishthira was currently in a state of misunderstanding. It was brought about by Swayam Bhagavan himself, because it is impossible for there to be a misunderstanding in Arjuna, because Arjuna is an eternal associate of the Lord and an incarnation of Nara. So it should be understood that Arjuna's misconception on the battlefield of Kurukshetra was in order to reveal Sri Gita Shastra, which reveals the truth about Lord Sri Krishna, who delivers the entire universe. Thus, Lord Krishna's compassion is extreme, great. Chakravarti Thakur notes that the Supreme Lord, when he was rushing towards Bhishma, his uttariya, his upper cloth had fallen down. This indicates that because he was in such a state of extreme fury, he did not even note whether his upper cloth had fallen down or not. Because Lord Sri Krishna's nature of being a Bhakta Vatsala could not be given up. And Arjuna was not capable of fighting with Bhishma at that time. The Lord gave up his own promise to protect Arjuna. I will not take weapons and fight. He had promised this. But it was not possible for anybody else to deal with this situation. So at that time, Bhishma had promised, to fulfill Bhishma's promise, that I will overcome Arjuna. So in this way, he delighted Vishnu. Bhumi was so frightened. She was trembling that my Lord, he has given up his promise. And even though it is not the time for dissolution, he is going to destroy me too. Sri Baladev Vidyabhushana notes that Ihakechidahu, some authorities explain verse 38 as follows. Bhishma and the others had developed a certain perception of the Lord because they were overcome by the Asuras. That's why they saw him pierce, Krishna's body being pierced and so on. But now that that influence had been destroyed, now they are begging for forgiveness. So all of this happens when we assist demons, then we become overcome by demoniac consciousness, and we misperceive even the Supreme Lord. In text 39, Bhagavati indicates that the Supreme Lord was capable, even though he transgressed his limits. Yatha Rudrodijam Visham. Just as one who is not Lord Shiva cannot drink poison and sustain himself. The reason for that transgression was his natural compassion. So the Supreme Lord's beauty as Parthasarathi in the Battle of Kurukshetra was something that was worth seeing. On his left hand, he had the rope with which to control the horses. On the right hand, he had that goad, that not goad, for horse also to control, you have to whip them. So that also was there. Then from his lotus mouth, he was directing the horses by making sounds, boom, boom. So that sweetness, that beauty was especially sweet. It was worth seeing. I was able to see that. Arjuna was not able to see that. May my attraction for that Supreme Lord, may my attraction be towards that Supreme Lord. And he refers to himself as one who is about to die. Mumur Shoho indicates that Bhishma actually wanted to die. He could die whenever he wanted. And he was extremely greedy to relish the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. So from this we understand that his pastime of engaging in war is also eternal. Marane yamati sagati. Whatever is the state of consciousness at the time of death, that will be his destination. All those who had seen the Supreme Lord and who were killed, even by someone other than Lord Krishna, even though they have an asuric nature, they attain Sarupa, they attain Sayujya Mukti. So if they can attain Sayujya Mukti as your devotee, when I die with my consciousness fixed in you, while directly looking at you, then why will I not attain your pastimes? That is the implication. Surupam Gata means that they attain the original features of the spirit soul, of being omniscient and so on. Actually, they attain the original features of the Supreme Lord, and they also attain the Supreme Lord, who is omniscient and so on. There are certain features of a liberated soul, being sinless and so on. Comes in the Upanishad. Okay, I'll stop with that. It's very interesting. Yes.
We hear many times that in Mahabharata, the participants, even with Duryodhana or others, everyone is a part of some team. Eternally they go in different universes and perform this Leela, Kurukshetra, and some things are going on. So is correct or not? Like they are eternal associates of Lord.
As far as I know, no, you don't have enemies of the Lord who are like that. Even Jaya Vijay, it's not that every time Jaya Vijay fall down. It's just this time they fell down. Not every time. There's no scarcity of asuras, so what's the problem? This world is full of asuras.
So those who died on battlefield, they are conditioned souls who got they become like
demoniac conditioned souls.
They got Kripa Siddhi, can we say?
Yes. That in Sayujya Mukti, no? That's what he stated. Sayujya Mukti Prapta. That in Sayujya Mukti.
Oh, it will not be considered in Siddhi something.
No. The spiritual perfection, it's not material perfection. Yogic Siddhis are material perfection.
Sayujya Mukti can also be considered Swarupam. Sayujya Mukti.
Well, in the vague sense, one attains, Rupa also means nature, Swabhava. The nature of the soul is to be eternal. So one might be given eternal existence. It's not wrong. That is what is appropriate for those who are inimical. Those who are inimical, that's what they can expect.
Yes. So one more question. So like we read in the qualities of Krishna, 64 qualities, one comes true to his promise, that also is there, no? And it's compassionate, yes, and Bhakti-vaibhava, all these qualities are there, that list. So how we can reconcile this both at the same time?
Here also he was true to his devotee's promise. See, this is a mixture of both Bhakti-vaibhava and fulfilling his promise. He is affectionate to Bhishma and he wanted to fulfill Bhishma's promise.
But he's true to his promise.
That's okay. But again, here he did not actually do anything. No, he was about to kill and he stopped. So he did not really break his promise. Okay. This is why Swayam Bhagavan actually spins our head. It's easier to deal with Krishna's plenary portions.
Sometimes some people say that he didn't lift any weapon. He lifted that ratha wheel, not a weapon. So that's why also he didn't break his promise.
No. The idea is that you cannot. He promised that he would not take any weapon to protect the Pandavas,
Mm.
which clearly he broke, but he did not. I mean, he was about to break. You can say he was about to break. That's what you can accuse him of. He was about to break. He did not break. That's all. But he did fulfill Bhishma's promise.
Mm.
He failed his promise. Who failed whose promise?
Lord Krishna failed his promise, no, Prabhu. He said, I don't hold a weapon in the battlefield.
No. He was supposed to protect Arjuna. The promise was, I will never protect the Pandavas and the army of the Pandavas using my weapons. Okay. So now Bhishma has attacked Arjuna, and Krishna is gone with a chariot wheel in order to kill Bhishma. But right at that moment, the battle stopped. Right at that moment, the battle stopped. So there was no real threat to Arjuna's life also. So Krishna did not break his promise, and he fulfilled Bhishma's promise. So everything was worked out. In a split second, everything was worked out. Okay. There is a fine article by old article in the 80s, early 80s, Back to Godhead article by Ravindra Swarup Prabhu, where he analyzes those two verses of Bhishma Dev, where Bhishma is praying to the Lord, that particular incident. I should post that article. It's a very nice article. Very, very good. Okay. Panchagalpaturu Veshya Prapasindhya Vachapati Tanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha.